Well, thank you all for being here tonight, and I'd like to welcome the new people to the class who haven't been here before. And tonight I would like to talk about where we came from. And when we understand a bit of where we came from, we'll be able to understand a bit more about where we're going. We're a part of an evolving race, and that much our science has identified. But what that means, science has not been able to tell us because science doesn't know. There's a lot of speculation as to why we are here, and what does it mean to be human, and what are we connected to. Our scientific traditions tend to look backward in time to find relics to give us answers to those questions so we can understand our past, so perhaps we can understand more about our present and what it means to be human and what we are. Underneath all of those investigations, I do believe we're looking for the purpose of our existence, why we are here. So we look for where we came from, what are our roots, to understand some of what it means to be human now, so we understand maybe where we're going. In tonight's discussion, I'm going to present some information that was given to me by the Guardian Alliance that will be very controversial if you've been schooled in traditional earthly thinking. It is a history, and I'm going to leave out a lot simply because it would take a very long time to cover the whole history. But it's basically a history of our origins, and our origins are very different than what science has at this time formulated their ideas around. We did not come out of the apes, they came out of us, some of them. The early man, as our history has identified, some of them were connected to us, others were completely independent races that evolved at different times with us, but that weren't connected to us. There's so much to our history that we have not had exposure to, and I would like to bring some of that information to you tonight as it was presented to me by the Guardian Alliance. In order to understand our history, we are also going to need to understand a little bit about the way a 15-dimensional universe works, because there is much more to the universe than our little solar systems, or even than the massive galaxies that we're able to see with our telescopes and the Hubble Space, telescope and all that. There's much more to reality than even those massive things. So I'm going to give a bit of a structure of what it means to be in a 15-dimensional matrix, and then I am going to show you where our basic genetic pattern came from. And I hope I'm able to convey this information to you in a way that somehow, at least intuitively, I can pass on the meaning of this. There is a meaning within understanding these things through which our whole self-concept of a race is redefined. There's a part of ourselves that has been lost for centuries and centuries that has been completely unavailable to us, but intuitively we have sensed a longing for and a lack of. When I was presented with this information by the Guardian Alliance, something opened up in me, and it knew that this was true, and it reconnected me as an individual to the universe. And I was able to find a greater love for our species because I saw its place within the greater scheme of things. We were a grand species once. We were not apes. And to understand this, I hope I can convey somehow through what I discussed this evening, the beauty and the meaning of what it means to be human. And also, once we understand that, where we have come from, we will begin to understand what is our process of evolution, where we are going. Because it is not just that we got this far and we happen to evolve to this place and there's really no direction. Evolution is not aimless. There is a purpose, there is an agenda. There are probable versions of what any species can evolve into, but there is also a primary version of what a species was intended to become. And if we can understand that, perhaps for the first time in at least the last 10,000 years, if we can grasp what we were a part of and what we were evolving toward to become, it can really change the way we feel about ourselves and our race, and we can take an active hand in trying to reach that potential more quickly, because we do have a choice in how quickly we will or will not evolve. So for tonight's discussion, I will begin where I left off with the last class. This diagram here, pretty simple looking diagram, shows the basic conceptual structure of the energy systems for what is called the cosmic matrix. At the center of the cosmic matrix, And this is a center that we will not find no matter how far we send out a rocket ship into space. There's multi-levels of dimensions to go through before you could ever find the center. But there is a center to the cosmos. It is called the unici, using the Guardian's terms. It doesn't really matter what you call it. All of our religions have taught us about this using the concept of God, because it is not just an energy source through which the whole universe is continually and perpetually fed energy. It is a source of intelligent identity as well. It is energy identity. And everything in the universe is composed of portions of identity out of the unici. We are all composed of particles that are conscious units of the unici, which means we are all composed of particles of the consciousness of God. And that alone, for me, was a very moving concept. And it's very true. This is where science and religion comes together. Energy and identity go together. Identity is energy, and energy is identity. The central source of that is the unici, and it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it God, or you can call it the unici, or that great central source that we come out of. But it is there, and it creates and forms and holds together perpetually, forever and eternally, the entire electromagnetic structure that the rest of the universe is built upon. So the dimensions flow through each other. So when I'm speaking of a 15-dimensional matrix that we're evolving in, we are evolving in one of these. Now, in our 15-dimensional scale, which would be this one, the energy particles, basically, even though we have them when we look under our microscopes, you will see particles that move clockwise or counterclockwise. The general flow of the microparticles in our system moves counterclockwise, while in the parallel system move clockwise. So you have two counter-rotating 15-dimensional scales superimposed within each other. Right now, in our 15-dimensional scale, we are right around in the third dimension, but there's really more to it. That's where our consciousness is stationed as individuals. We are focusing in and perceiving through three-dimensional perception. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that means in terms of the dimensions below it, because it's more than just three-dimensional perception that we're seeing when we look out here. Okay, so I just want you to understand the basic layout of what a 15-dimensional matrix is. Now, this was material that I covered before. Now we're going to go into a bit new material. If I can do this without knocking down the light. There we go. Okay. My discussion tonight is going to get into where we came from, where we're going as a race. All right, here again is our 15-dimensional scale within our 15-dimensional matrix. Okay, in the 15-dimensional scale, there are something called harmonic universes. A harmonic universe is formed by three-dimensional bands and how they relate to each other. And in between every set of three-dimensional bands, there's something called a repulsion zone, which is an area of magnetism that literally forces the dimensions away from each other. So each harmonic universe will become a sort of spherical reality field that is separate from the one above it. They have a different rate of pulsation of particles. So even though they are taking place in the same space, individuals focused in one harmonic universe will not be able to perceive the activity or individuals focused in another one. And this is the basic structure of what we are living in here on planet Earth in the galaxy that we know. We are in something called the first harmonic universe. It is composed of dimensions 1, 2, and 3. Dimensions 4, 5, and 6, which are the ones that are the next up in the dimensional scale, they would represent our next stage of evolution. They represent the second harmonic universe. The third harmonic universe would be represented by the center, which is dimensions 7, 8, and 9. That is the harmonic universe that every one of our consciousness had to pass through in order to expand itself into the 15-dimensional matrix. Through the third harmonic universe, we will also be able to leave the 15-dimensional matrix. The 15-dimensional matrix is what gives us the quality of perception we call time and growth through time. When we evolve through this scale and return through here, we enter a level of eternal existence that really can't even be described in time terms, in linear language. But it's a very beautiful place to be, and it is really the objective of all of our spiritual traditions. They have been trying to, in their conceptual way, lead us to the evolution through this scale and back through the center, through the third harmonic universe. Now, there is also the fourth harmonic universe here, which is composed of dimensions 10, 11, and 12. And then there's the final fifth harmonic universe, which is composed of dimensions 13, 14, and 15. So for our discussion, we really just need to understand that there are 5 different harmonic universes within the 15-dimensional matrix that we're a part of. The only ones we really need to be concerned about now are the one we're in and the one we're going to be going to once we evolve beyond the one we're in. We are in the first harmonic universe. We are going to be going, as we evolve as a species, into the second harmonic universe. Now, in some of our traditions, we have stories of heaven. And this is what they are referring to. They are referring to a place that does exist, and it has matter, just like our world has matter, but the matter is less dense. We do have bodies there in the second harmonic universe. But our stories of heaven were trying to lead us to an understanding of how to get to the second harmonic universe, for it is much more beautiful there. Energy is much finer, consciousness is much clearer, beings are much more evolved, so we don't have the problems and the hurtful conditions that we often face here. It is a heaven compared to where we are now. All right, the harmonic universes also represent different time cycles, which means the particles that things and consciousness are composed of in those universes pulsate at different rates of speed compared to each other. In our universe, in our first harmonic universe, we are in what they call the Taran time cycle. That's the slowest moving, the slowest pulsating of the 5 harmonic universes. The next one, and as we move, as we evolve out of the Taran time cycles and move into the second harmonic universe, we will be evolving into a time cycle called the Andunk time cycle, which is the next fastest moving. And they progressively go up. The fifth one would be the fastest moving. So we actually progress from the slowest moving time cycles to the lower harmonic universes up to the top, and then we have to come back again, slow down again, to go back through the center. And that's really the process of the overall evolution. But right now all we need to worry about are the 2 time cycles, the Andunk time cycle that we are headed toward, and the Taran time cycle that we are in right now. The most important thing at this time, I believe, for us to understand about the relationship between those 2 harmonic universes is that our planet originally came from here. Earth came from here. And the planets in our solar system that we have identified, and there are 2 that we have not yet identified, they have all come out of a planet in a condition that happened to a planet in the second harmonic universe. There was, about 560 trillion years ago, and the Guardians tell me this is the closest translation of time they can get. We are dealing with 2 different time cycles. It's very hard to translate amounts of time from one system in relation to the other, but in our time terms, in our time concepts, it would be about 560 trillion years ago. There was a planet formed within the second harmonic universe, and that planet's name was Terra. And Terra evolved for many, many millions and millions of years. Now, when we're dealing with the second harmonic universe and Terra, many of the visitors to our planet right now that you hear people talk about in like alien visitation and all of these kind of things, and some people don't think they're real because they can't imagine where they could come from. We know that they're not on Mars. We have, telescopes up there. We'd see them. Well, a lot of them, and most of them, are coming from the second harmonic universe. That's why you can send anything you want up in space to try to find life here. You're looking in the wrong harmonic universe, so you probably won't find it. You have to go into this harmonic universe to find it. So what happened a very long time ago on the planet called Terra, about 560 million years ago, there was a race of beings seated on this planet. The race was called the tanisian, and they were a very, very special race. They were kind of like the babies of the universe. The tanisian race was created by taking the genetic strains of all of the other type of beings that existed within all of the other dimensional systems and harmonic universes, taking them and splicing together the best of the best in order to form a super prototype. And what the beings who created us wanted to create was a species that could embody not only a soul, but an oversoul. It could embody the consciousness of 12 of the 15 dimensions. Most body forms, either here or in the second harmonic universe, can only embody within them a certain amount of energy identity. after a certain amount of energy identity is added in, the gene code can't tolerate anymore. And that's when the form would transmute and the consciousness would move into and evolve into a state of pure consciousness being, where it no longer needed a biology. The Tanisian race was created to be a living library for the 15-dimensional matrix. It would contain the gene codes of 12, within biology, it would contain 12 levels of dimensional systems. And there were contributors of, I think they said about several 100 million different species contributed gene code product to create this new species. This species was viewed as godlings. We were created to eventually become creator gods. And we were revered highly by those other extraterrestrial and second harmonic civilizations who wanted to see themselves be able to expand and evolve beyond their own potentials of their species. So we were created with a lot of high hopes. And the Tanisians are who we originally were. And this is a surprise to most people, because most people don't even know the second harmonic universe exists. So about 560 million years ago, the universe got together, if you want to look at it that way. Different biologies got together and contributed their genetic material to create this super race of beings. And they succeeded. They created the Tanisian race. They were second harmonic beings. There were gender delineations at certain periods of time. There were other periods of time when there was no gender to them. They did not reproduce by mammalian means as we do. They produced through energy replication. They didn't need to do the mammalian thing. They were a very, very special breed in the sense that they had 12 strands of DNA. We have 2 strands of DNA. Can you imagine what it might mean to have the potentialities of 12 strands? What abilities would that give us? What would our minds be like? What would our comprehension, our power, what would we be like with 12 strands? Compared to what we know ourselves as now, we would be godlike. We would have abilities that we could only dream of having now. And that is what the Tanisian race did have. And for many, many hundreds of thousands of years, they evolved very well. They were created to be the guardians for the planet Terra. They were in charge of making sure the energy balances of the whole planetary system stayed intact. They were responsible for creating harmonious relationships with the other galaxies and the other planets in the galaxies of the second harmonic universe, because there were many, unlike it is here in the first harmonic universe within our solar system, within the Terran solar system, there were many active extraterrestrial civilizations, and it was just a much larger intergalactic community there. The Tanisians were raised to become mediators between species because they had the genetic codes that should enable them to be able to identify with every species. So they had a big job to play. They were supposed to be guardians. They were supposed to be mediators. They were really supposed to help the harmonious evolution of all species in the universe. Well, they evolved for quite a long time. They evolved for about 10 million years there. But there were also a lot of things happening in their culture. I won't spend a lot of time on that tonight because it gets into, just like we have little politics things happening here, they had it happening there too on planetary levels. There were certain groups from other planetary systems. They evolved for quite a long time. They evolved for about 10 million years there. But there were also a lot of things happening in their culture. I won't spend a lot of time on that tonight because it gets into, just like we have little politics things happening here, they had it happening there too on planetary levels. There were certain groups from other planetary systems that didn't like what was going on in one place, and there was a lot of conflicts and those kind of things. At certain points in the evolution of the Tanisian, there were other extraterrestrial forces that weren't originally wanting to participate in the Tanisian experience, in the experiment of creating the Tanisian, that decided they wanted to take it in their own direction. So they came and they interbred with some of them. They distorted the gene code of the original Tanisian. And because of that distortion, there was a certain clarity of consciousness that was lost by the Tanisian. Some of their race began to digress. They began to lose touch with, they had a consciousness that felt total at one-ment with God. And it was a state of love and joy and beauty that's very hard to describe. When they got involved with some of the other extraterrestrial groups that did not have that high of a gene code, it reduced their own. And it also reduced their ability to identify that strongly with the God presence, with the harmonious operations of the universe. So some of them evolved into a species called the Atlanteans. Not the Atlanteans, but Atlanteans. There's only one T in that name. That was where our original race memories of Atlantis actually came from. It came from Harmonic 2 in Atlantia. They began to have problems with what we would term here ego. They began to see themselves as very powerful, and they began to see power as something not to be used just in love and in service to the universe, but as something that they could collect and use against other beings. There was a large group of them in power in the Atlantean civilization. There was a group of them called the Templar Solar Initiates, who were appointed as the guardian keepers of certain of the energy dynamics of planet Terra. It was a very, very sacred position, and it was given to them by something called the Sirian Council from the planetary star systems of Sirius. They had given them, because the ones from Sirius were part of the parentage of the Tanisian race, and they had entrusted their children with this very, very sacred job. Well, the Templar Solar Initiates goofed up big time, to put it mildly. Our Atlantean memories, which we all have at some level, deep down in our gene code, are the memories of what the Tanisian did to Terra in their abuse of power. And what they did was they used certain crystalline technologies, which are chelantic technologies, as was discussed in some of the other classes that I gave. They used them in a way that caused implosions and then explosions within the energetic grid of planet Terra. Part of planet Terra, not the whole thing, but part of it broke off. Its energetic form dismantled instead of being together. When a planet or a being begins to dismantle itself energetically, that is the opposite of evolution. It is de-evolution. It is moving backwards and digressing into something less than what it was, rather than evolving into something that it was supposed to become.
Can you stop and fix that?
You want to stop?
It's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it's blinding us now.
Is it-
Blinding you?
I'll take a break and fix the light.
Okay.
Okay. All right. We were discussing before our short break there how the Tanisian race from the second harmonic universe began to digress and abuse power, and how because of that abuse of power that the planet Terra underwent a tragedy where a part of its substance was literally blown apart. Now, where did that substance go? It left the second harmonic universe. It dismantled itself in energy terms, and it fell in vibration. It fell in speed. Its particles began to pulse slower. It ended up in the first harmonic universe. The fragments of Terra became our solar system. And there are 12 planets. One of them imploded a long time ago. It was called Maldak. And we have an asteroid belt now, I believe, where that once was. There's another planet that hasn't been discovered yet, and it's called Nibiru. And that's considered basically the 12th planet. And the sun is also considered a planet. So when the fragment came off of Terra from the second harmonic universe, it came into the first harmonic universe, and it created our Big Bang. The numbers are a bit off as far as where our scientists think the Big Bang occurred. It did occur, but not exactly for the reasons they think. And the planet existed before that Big Bang occurred. But what we are calling our solar system and the planets here were actually part of the planet Terra from the second harmonic universe. So our universe came into being this way, our solar system came into being this way, not our galaxy, just our solar system. The souls of the people who were on that portion of Terra when it exploded and disintegrated, they were killed. But when their bodies are killed, where does their consciousness go? Because they were part of an explosion, the energy structures, what we call Partykai grids, of their bodies and of their consciousness were also ripped apart. They dropped in vibration. They also ended up down here in the first harmonic universe. And if it were not for what was attempted and succeeded after that occurrence, those souls would have become part of what's called the unified field of energy within dimensions 1, 2, and 3. They would have become the firmament and the substance that other species would evolve with and through, rather than retaining a sentient identity of their own. They would lose all complete orientation of consciousness as a Taurinaceum. And they would start their evolutionary process from a lower level than they originally started it in the first place. Because the evolutionary strain of the Taurinaceum did not start down here. It started in the second harmonic universe. They were thrown all the way back down to the first, and they would have had to start basically as subatomic particles that make up, basic matter substance here. In order to preserve the strain of the Taurinaceum, and also in order to salvage those souls, instead of making them begin again as something that they were intended to be much better than at the time, much higher level of evolution, there was an experiment tried, and it was called the Taurinaceum 2 experiment. Now I'll get into this a little bit in a minute. Just want to see if I'm jumping ahead a little, because I think I might be. We'll go back real quick to the Taurinaceums from Terra, the Taurinaceum 1 experiment. These are some of the genetic contributors to the race. From harmonic 3, which is the 7, 8, and 9, there are something called the Lyrans. Now, they're in a state of being that is not physical as we know physical. It's almost plasmoid, where it's kind of like a gaseous, liquidous type substance, but they are fully conscious and sentient, even much more than we are, yet is not a type of physical existence that we would identify as physical. Well, the harmonic 3 Lyrans were basically the founders. They came up with the idea for the whole Taurinaceum experiment, and they are the ones that kind of motivated other beings within the universal structures and within the other harmonic universes to participate in this experience. And they served as overseers for the Taurinaceum of harmonic 2. Now, in harmonic 2, there were many different populations on different planets there. They used names that we are familiar with here to give us an idea of the orientation of how, when we see a star system up here in our skies, there's a consciousness affiliated with that, and it has a connection to a series of planets and consciousness within the second harmonic universe. So they use names that are familiar to us, like the Sirian star system, the Pleiades. Those are our names. They use them so we understand the connection. All right, so in harmonic 2, in D4, 5, and 6, there were also Sirian beings, what would be considered consciousness that are connected to our planets, our Sirian planetary systems. They were called Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were part of the genetic contributors to the Taurinaceum race. They were also part of the teachers and overseers for the Taurinaceum until they evolved to become sentient and adult in their own right. So we had a very strong, as Taurinaceum, we had a very strong relationship with the Sirian Anunnaki in the second harmonic universe. The Pleiadians were also part of the genetic contributors to our Taurinaceum race. The Lyran Elohim were also a part of it, and the Elohim appear in our biblical stories. They are beings. They are of an extraterrestrial nature. They came out of the harmonic 3 Lyran founders. They're one of the first forms created in harmonic 2 by the Lyran founders, and they are very godlike compared to even the Taurinaceans. They contributed quite a bit to our genetic makeup. So they had a very vested interest in how our species evolved. You have a question?
No, I just want to make a point there. The Elohim in Hebrew literally means those that came from above.
Does it?
Yeah.
That's what his translation is.
Right. Okay, so we are directly genetically related to the Elohim. There were also beings in Harmonic 2 from what we would consider the Orion-Vega star systems. They contributed genetic material. Also from the Andromeda, the Arcturan, and many others. There are many other systems we don't even have names for to compare to what they have there. But we have many, many genetic contributors. But these are some of the main ones. And why they want us to understand that, they want us to understand that when we look up into the sky, and when we see our stars and see our Palladian clusters and our Sirian planets, there is a direct energetic relationship to the consciousness that exists on those planets in the second harmonic and our gene code. We are basically an extraterrestrial gene code. And that is very amazing to many people because we're taught to believe that extraterrestrials don't exist. And when it comes down to that, it's saying we don't exist because we are the extraterrestrials. We just happen to be residing for the last many millions of years on planet Earth. It is important to understand our connection to the stars because it's not just a hypothetical thing. It's not just an astrology thing. It's a literal thing that's happening in our gene code. And a part of our genes, in the little tiny filaments that compose our genes, vibrate in the same way that certain of those star clusters in our skies vibrate. There's a direct energetic link, and it helps us to create a sense of home when we realize that. We start to feel really connected to the universe when you start to realize that part of your own self. And you can feel it. It's an intuitive thing, but you can feel it there once you start working with it. So these are some of the contributors to the Tyrannissium 1 gene code. Okay? And as I said before, they were created to embody the full oversoul. And we were supposed to hold the cellular memory records of 12 of the 15 dimensions. So we were created to be a pretty awesome guardian race. And that's kind of nice. It's a lot nicer to realize that than to think that, gee, we were apes and we grew up to be this for some reason. You know, there was a purpose to this. There was a purpose to our whole species. And we haven't gotten rid of that purpose. Whether or not we acknowledge where we came from, that purpose still lives within ourselves. And it will still move us forward in time. And if we become more aware of that purpose, we can make that moving through time toward what we were supposed to become happen more quickly. Okay, the Tyrannissium 1 race evolved on planet Terra in the second harmonic for about 10 million years. And they had, you know, upsurgences, points where it was their heights, and then they digressed a little, and then they come up again. And the final digression was when they blew part of the planet apart and ended up down here. Basically, the ones that were left on the planet Terra were migrated to other planets because the planet was made uninhabitable. It went through pole reversal, it went through conditions, energetically speaking, that its climate, you could not live on a planet that had gone through what Terra had gone through at that time. So most of the Tyrannissium had been migrated into other second harmonic planets before the explosion took place because they knew it was coming and they couldn't stop it. The ones who stayed are the ones who ended up here. They're the ones who basically became us. Okay? And it was about 550 million years ago, I believe they said, that Terra went through this explosion, so 550 million years ago is really when the planets in our solar system entered this harmonic universe. Okay, after our planet had been, let's say, created here, or relocated here is more like it. After Earth, Terra, we are still Terra, but they delineate us now as Earth, being a part of what Terra was. After Earth had ended up here, it was not possible to have life on the planet for quite a long time. It took time before even green things could grow or any of that. Firmament had to be built up. It takes a while for a planet to stabilize itself where it can sustain life after it goes through something like that. About 250 million years ago, the planet became able to sustain life, and it became a valuable piece of real estate to the beings in the Harmonic 2 universe. There were large numbers of them. Now, they had all cooperated on this Tyrannissian experiment, and many of them were very disgusted with the whole experiment because they saw how badly it turned out. there were certain races that did not want to see this experiment go again. They did not want this race restarted because of all the trouble we'd caused in Harmonic 2. They said, it was a bad race, the genetic strain didn't work, and they just wanted the territory of Earth now for their own experiments, for, creating other types of life forms. And there were others, the Syrians among them, and the Elohim among the strongest supporters, that said, no, we want this race to be reseeded again. We'll do it differently. We'll make it happen more slowly, where not so much power is given so quickly. We'll guard the strains to make sure that this distortion in the genetic code doesn't happen. But this race should be able to grow again. And there was a big division in our original genetic contributors. Some of them did not want to continue. Others did. And there was a war that took place over planet Earth, whether or not this race would be reseeded to give the consciousness, the souls that had ended up down here from that implosion, a chance to re-evolve back into what they had been. If that chance was not given us, we would evolve as consciousness, but we would never become what we had started out being. We would be kind of lost in the fields of time to evolve into all sorts of different forms. And it's like losing the mold that you were made from. It's a sad path for a soul who had that level of cognition once. When you knew yourself as a tanisian, to find yourself as a piece of rock on planet Earth and having no clue as to how to ever put your consciousness back together again into what you were, is a very sad predicament. And the saddest part is the people involved, or the souls involved in that, wouldn't even know it. They wouldn't have the level of consciousness to understand what had happened to them. Because we were loved by many of our parents from the Harmonic 2 universe, they fought a war. They said, we are going to reseed them here, and we are going to give this species a chance to come back to what it was, the ones who had fallen out of the species. Because some of the Taranisians evolved just fine on other planets in the second Harmonic. We'd call them extraterrestrials now, but they were actually us. But the ones that ended up down here, we were loved enough to where we were given a second chance. The Syrian councils were primarily responsible for this, and they work also through the first Harmonic Syrian star system. There are levels of activity taking place in the Sirius star system. There are civilizations that exist there, but they're cloaked. They're in the third dimension, or in the first Harmonic universe with dimensions 1, 2, 3, but they're off just a little bit frequency-wise, where we would have to know the frequency keys in order to go there and find them, but they are there. They're even in our first Harmonic universe. Some of them are Anunnaki, which were Syrian strains. The Anunnaki are a Syrian root race from the second Harmonic universe. The Anunnaki were appointed as one group of overseers to watch this experiment once the Earth territory had been won. The Elohim were also another group of overseers who did the same, and all of them worked through the Lyran councils of the founders in D7. They worked with them and under the guidance of them. The Pleiades, at certain points, did not want to continue this experiment. They abandoned us for a while, and they fought with the Syrians over letting us grow. And eventually, the Syrians and the Pleiadians came to an agreement where they decided, okay, we'll go for this, we'll be supportive, and we'll help this species to re-evolve. So the Pleiadians are now on our side, if you want to look at it that way. They are helping us to evolve. And at this point in time, there are many other things happening with the Earth, which I'm not going to go into them, that's a whole other class, but all of these parents that we came from, their species are still alive and well as we speak in the second Harmonic universe. Many of them are sending representatives to communicate with us and to help us through the times that are coming, because we're facing some interesting changes on a planetary level, and not just because of our own